I really do feel that these two are probably very ugly to each other behind closed doors. I feel like they're probably really nasty. They're probably really fighting. And I think that when they eventually separate, we're going to see a scandal like probably no other. I really do feel that Meghan's kind of like an Amber Heard when, if you know anything about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, but Amber was really famous for doing and saying things to Johnny when he wasn't aware. Like, for example, when he was intoxicated or when they were fighting, she would always do weirdo things like secretly film him and use that type of stuff, that footage, as leverage to try to build what I believe was her false case against him, to try to somehow prove that he was the aggressor and she was the victim. So I really do think that Meghan probably is doing things like that behind the scenes. And it's really funny that this clown goes walking over landmines last month and he can't see that his whole life has become a landmine. All this negative press, story after story after story after story for 6 long stinking years. Your life, Harry, has become a minefield that you are desperately trying to navigate, but you're failing miserably. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jennifer. I am so happy to have you here. I need you to be my spirit support animal, kind of like how Pedro always needs to cling on to someone on the red carpet. I did a video on that last week. If you haven't watched it, I'll link it in the description. Anywho, God love Pedro. Anyway, yeah, it's time to revisit Clown Town. Let's talk about Harry and Meghan. I have been reading everything going on with this whole Sentebale charity commission investigation findings. I'm sure you have too, because I read the actual UK charity commission findings, and then I also read the different statements that Prince Harry released after the charity commission findings. And then also I read the statements that were released from Sentebale themselves, the actual charity Sentebale, and the statements released by Dr. Sophie. And I made a video about this whole Sentebale deal back in April. I will also link that hot potato down in the description. But unfortunately, I myself and many like me are really coming to the foregone conclusion that Harry is just the most insolent, petulant, bratty man boy you would ever want to meet in your life. He has absolutely no self-introspection. He has no remorse. He doesn't look into his own behavior and maybe see how he can do better. It's all the blame game with Harry and Meghan, and I'll go more into Meghan later on in the video, but what it's come down to is that these two are getting exponentially worse as the months and the years go by. You would think after almost 6 years of after they left the family, trash talking their families, trash talking everybody that ever criticizes them, from newspapers to former business associates. It just, there's no introspection. There's no learning. There's nothing. There's no meeting people halfway. They're very black and white. It's either you're for them or you're against them. And even minor criticism is met with the most drippingly awful disdain you'd ever want to have in your life in the way of articles and interviews and press statements. It seems like Prince Harry has for years, ever since the tragic death of his late mother, Princess Diana, ever since her tragic death, he has made it abundantly clear that he hates the media, he distrusts the media, he thinks they're all evil, vile fools that caused the death of his mother. He wants nothing to do with them, but yet he runs to the media every single time he is criticized for anything, be it the criticism that him and his wife received in the aftermath of Megxit, or criticism in the way he manages his duties as patron of a charity like Sentebale. It seems like no matter what criticism you level at this man, he is going to react in such a way to basically take an opponent down. Way of the legal system and the courts by dragging companies, entities, people into these baseless year-long lawsuits, or he'll just clap back through his spokespeople, through his Sussex PR machine. It's just, this man cannot take any kind of criticism lying down. He has an innate, just almost compulsion. He's compelled to respond, and not in a very full or kind way. Let's put it that way. So what is the business with this whole Sentebale news firestorm that has been swirling over the past week? So let's go back to February 2025 when Dr. Sophie Chandauka privately made a complaint to the UK Charity Commission. Now, before that time, Harry and Prince Lesotho, who were the patrons of the charity that we know as Sentebale, it was formed in 2006 by these two in memory of their late mothers. They had been, I guess, what seems in some unresolved disputes behind the scenes. Now, Dr. Sophie was signed as chairwoman of this charity in 2003. She seems like from basically that time, all of 2024, fast forward to February 2025, there was a lot of tension. There was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. The main things that I guess was a source of contention that they were all fighting over was the fact that Harry wanted to try to secure more and more and more funding for Sentebale in the United States, because Harry is now based in the United States. He's not a full-time working member of the royal family anymore, and he's not based in London. And as we all know, he signed, along with his wife, that Netflix deal. But anyway, so he's wanting to take more and more dealings of the charity, more and more ways to secure funding on United States soil. And it seemed like Dr. Sophie and the way that she wanted to run the charity and a lot of people under her management weren't in agreement with that. They wanted to keep the management and the local running of the charity local. She wanted to keep it based in Africa because she has stated that she felt that it was better able to handle and manage the needs of the children of this Sentebale charity. And if you don't know, the Sentebale charity is basically helping children in Africa that are suffering with HIV and AIDS. So she wanted to keep it local. She wanted to keep it manageable and smaller in Africa. Harry didn't want that. Another huge source of contention was back in April 2024 when Harry decided, unbeknownst to Dr. Sophie and other leaders in the charity, that he wanted to bring last minute a Netflix camera crew to a charity polo match that was benefiting Sentebale. Now, let me just back up a little bit and tell you that from the time Harry married Meghan back in May 2018 to April 2024, Dr. Sophie has asserted that Harry, for 6 years, did not set foot in Africa, really had nothing to do with the interworkings of that charity. And it was only at her request that you need to come and visit and actually do something for the charity that he ended up visiting. So again, let's go back to February 2025. Dr. Sophie quietly goes to the UK Charity Commission. She is filing a claim, and I have my notes here, raising concerns because she feels that Harry and Prince Lesotho and other board members that side with them are trying to unfairly oust her from her management chairwoman position because she is daring to speak out about poor governance, abuse of power, and weak executive management. And she's raising concerns about financials, about, like, for example, not wanting the charity to try to be run over in the US. She wants to keep it local. She wants to keep it in Africa. She's raising questions about the financials. She's raising questions about donors that are leaving in mass, in droves. And she believes it had to do with all the negative press surrounding Harry and Meghan since they decided to leave the royal family as full-time working members. So she goes quietly and makes that claim and that concern. Following that, in March 2025, that is when Prince Harry and Prince Lesotho, along with 5 other board members, make their statement about how they can no longer work with Dr. Sophie. They are stepping down. She has given them no other choice. She has just completely broken down all communication. They cannot see themselves as patrons of a charity working with this chairwoman. And basically that came as a complete and utter devastating shock to Dr. Sophie herself. She had absolutely no warning. Prince Harry and Princessio were going to step down, and she felt that it was in spectacularly poor taste. Why would they choose to do that behind her back, behind other leaders in the charity's back, make a public statement? And she knew why. She really felt that it was an attempt to smear her good name. And it was also in retaliation for the fact that she had gone quietly to the board in February 2025 and made her claims against Prince Harry and other trustees and Princessio and members of the board basically trying to oust her because she was just raising concerns about the day-to-day governance of this charity because she felt that it was being poorly managed. So because of this dramatic and just devastating statement, which basically left Sentebale in the dust, because let's face it, nobody knows who anyone outside of Prince Harry and Princessio, they attach their name and their faces to this charity. So when Harry and the prince come out and make this statement that this woman is essentially a villain, she's hard to work with, we cannot see a way forward, she's just, ruining this charity, and because of this, we have to step down, and it's so devastating because this is our life's work. We really, really have put our heart and soul into this charity, but because of this woman, we have to step down. So Dr. Sophie, and rightly so, goes on Sky News Australia soon after to give her side of the story, to clear her name, and to clear the names of the people that work in the charity that happen to agree with her, because they feel that Prince Harry completely just is out of control. He is a patron, and a patron is not someone that is a chairperson that is designed to work and oversee the inner workings of a charity. He's just someone who is supposed to show up, basically flash his pearly whites, and be a name and a spokesperson and someone that's going to put a face to the charity and encourage people to give money to this charity. So he's overstepping his bounds. So she goes on Sky News and clears her name. And this is just a little recap, a taste of why she felt she had to go on the record on Sky News to talk about this in the first place.
What you're essentially saying is that the Duke of Sussex is guilty of harassment and bullying and improper conduct in the governance of a charity.
Well, let me put it to you this way. I'm going to give you a really good example. The only reason I'm here, Trevor, is because at some point on Tuesday, Prince Harry authorized the release of a damaging piece of news to the outside world without informing me or my country directors or my executive director. And can you imagine what that attack has done for me, on me, and the 540 individuals in the Sentebale organizations and their family? That is an example of harassment and bullying at scale. And so if the world didn't want to believe that there's such a thing as bullying, this unleashing of the Sussex machine on me and the 540 employees at Sentebale who received this and have had to defend it.
Well, by the way, when you say the Sussex machine, what are you talking about?
The PR machine that supports Prince Harry's efforts. The only way we discovered of his decision was through the Sussex machine activating newspapers.
She explains herself and her position and does a fantastic job of it, in my opinion. She comes across as very trustworthy. She comes across as measured, calm, composed, and basically stating the facts of what happened. And we all know that Harry probably couldn't take the fact that she was going to do that she was going to go and clear her name. Because let's face it, Harry has the ego the size of the continent of Africa. But think about it. It's rather fitting that Dr. Sophie had her own claims of misogyny and bullying where Harry was concerned. And I find that fitting because Harry and Meghan have made a career of calling everyone in their orbit that disagrees with them bullies and racists against them. So that's why I think it was such chef kiss, just desserts, to have a proud Zimbabwe woman in that interview defending herself and accusing Harry of bullying and racism. Unbelievably brave of Dr. Sophie to do it. And we all saw her at the time, watched that interview and thought, you know what? She makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. So the UK Charity Commission launches their official probe into all of this mess in April 2025, that the Charity Commission has now come out and released their official findings. And I think what is really sticking in a lot of people's craw and getting people upset and agitated about it is because it really does seem that the Charity Commission is kind of straddling the fence. And it's interesting because in Harry's statement, which he has to clap back, of course, he accuses the charity of doing that. And that's one thing I do kind of agree with him on. They're really right in the middle. They're not so much agreeing with Dr. Sophie, nor are they really agreeing with Harry. And I have in my notes here what the Charity Commission has found after they had that regulatory compliance case opened in April 2025. And what they have found is no evidence of widespread or systematic bullying or harassment. And in summation, what they have said is that they have acknowledged there is a strong perception of ill treatment on both sides. They also kind of wagged the finger at both sides, saying that this was dragged out publicly and should not have been, because all it serves to do is not only undermine the charity Sentebale itself, but it undermines public trust in charities in general, and it prevents them from doing the work that they're supposed to be doing, which is benefiting whatever cause. And in Sentebale's case, it's not helping the children. And so what happens? Well, of course, quick as a wink, Harry's team, his PR machine, has to, of course, release a statement about everything that he disagrees with the Charity Commission statement. And it seems like he is overwhelmingly upset that they did straddle the fence, that they really didn't admonish one side or the other, because in his mind, he feels that, of course, he's done nothing wrong. And he says, quote, "Unsurprisingly, the commission makes no findings of wrongdoing in relation to Sentebale's co-founder and former patron, Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex. They also found no evidence of widespread bullying, harassment, or misogyny." He goes on and is basically falsely claimed by the current chair, Dr. Sophie. I find it particularly interesting that he made certain to highlight and cherry pick that specific element of the commission's findings. They didn't find widespread bullying or harassment on either side, and that's basically what they said. And he's taking and globbing onto that little point and hammering that home in his own statement. But think about it. He's highlighting the fact that, yes, there's no evidence of widespread bullying on my part, but essentially what he's doing is he's going against the UK Charity Commission's recommendation almost immediately out of the gate. What did they tell both parties? They told both parties to cut it out. They told both parties to stop fighting publicly. And he also says, quote, that their report falls short in many regards, primarily the fact that the consequences of the current chair's actions will not be borne by her, but by the children who rely on Sentebale's support. And I find it really, really telling in that statement released by his PR machine that he either calls Dr. Sophie her, doesn't refer to her by name, or he won't use her honorary doctor title in front of her name. He'll just call her Miss Chandauka. And to me, that's pretty bullying behavior in and of itself. So he releases that statement, like we all know that he would, because he can never take any criticism lying down, because God forbid he step back, he take a moment, he, view the landscape. And it's really funny that this clown goes walking over landmines last month, and he can't see that his whole life has become a landmine. All this negative press, story after story after story after story, for 6 long stinking years, your life, Harry, has become a minefield that you are desperately trying to navigate, but you're failing miserably. What would have stopped this man from releasing a statement, something to the effect of that he honors the Charity Commission findings and he will continue to, maybe he can rethink his decision to step down. Maybe he could have said, I'm going to move forward and try to work it out. Or maybe he could have said, the association with Sentebale is over, but I respect the findings, period. Or, hey, shocker of all shockers, what if he just said nothing at all? But of course he can't do that because he's in the right 100% of the time. So we've got his statement. And unfortunately, because of that statement, Sentebale came back with their own statement. I don't think that it was as petulant as Harry's was, in the sense that they basically said that they acknowledge the findings and that they respect the findings. The Charity Commission's findings is giving Sentebale some degree of reassurance that the commission has not identified widespread bullying within the charity, and that yes, they've acknowledged that there was ill treatment on both sides, but because again, you have to remember, Harry's always the first one to clap back and act like a jerk, act like a bully. So again, I can really see why Dr. Sophie wanted to clear her name and the other people that are leading and working in the charities. Dr. Sophie is essentially saying, well, yes, the Charity Commission has come out and said that they have not found widespread or systematic bullying within the charity organization. However, they're ill-equipped and not really formed or able to do that type of individual investigating. And she says that the commission has not investigated any individual allegations and therefore has not made any findings in relations to said individuals, including Prince Harry. And then her, along with Sentebale, has said that the issues not investigated by the commission can and may be dealt with through avenues more appropriate than the commission. And I think that goes back to what I was telling you guys earlier, was that how I told you how Harry just took the commission's findings and was just cherry picking what he thought would make him look better when he released a statement. You know, he's just basically like coming back immediately saying, see, no bullying. I haven't done anything. And Dr. Sophie obviously now again has to feel compelled to fight back and clear Sentebale's name and her own personal professional name by saying, well, yeah, but that's not really what the Charity Commission is supposed to be doing anyway. They're supposed to be just basically looking at the inner workings and how how this charity is run in the day-to-day workings. It seems to me that when she first spoke out in February 2025, she did it privately. She did not do it publicly. This all came out after Harry publicly resigned from the charity. And he did so in a way that was very scathing to Dr. Sophie's professional reputation and also that of the charity. Because think about it, if you really love this charity and want to see the best for the charity and you think it's so important and it's your life's work, why would you go badmouth the chairwoman and other leaders publicly? Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just quietly step down? Or why not just say nothing at all? Why do you have to feel that you have to clap back? You know, he got really, really scared about the fact that Dr. Sophie went quietly to the Charity Commission and filed her complaints. How she was feeling like she was trying to be bullied out of her position as chairwoman. And it all stems from the fact that his incredibly large and fragile ego couldn't take that. He couldn't take the fact that a proud, smart Black woman was going and complaining against him. So he felt that, you know what? You're going to complain against me, then fine, I'm just going to resign. But in whose best interest is that? If what you're doing is trying to work for a charity that benefits children, that was not the right way to go about it. Absolutely not. So now it doesn't really seem that this claim that Dr. Sophie put in way back in February 25 has gone away. It's still active. And do I think that she's probably going to hire her own private firm to investigate her allegations against him? I think so. I don't think we've heard the last of Dr. Sophie Chandauka, and good, I say, because people like Harry need to be taken down a whole lot of notches. This is just unbelievably so selfish of him to do, to drag his so-called beloved charity through the mud like this. And we all know what was the last straw for Dr. Sophie, and it was Harry's wife and her behavior at that celebrity polo match back in April 2024. Basically, Harry and Meghan took their own private enterprise, their deal with Netflix, their own personal money-making deal with Netflix, and they inserted it into Sentebale, and they tried to make it all about them. It was never about the children. And personally, I don't blame Dr. Sophie one little bit. She explained in that Sky News interview about how when he tried at the 11th hour to go to that polo match and bring all those Netflix cameras in tow, that the venue that they had originally secured backed out. They wanted no part of that. They were scrambling at the last minute to find a venue. So that right there shows you that there was a lot of disruption. There was a lot of inner workings behind the scenes that was just a lot of selfishness reckless on the part of Harry and Meghan. And then to go to the charity and as a chairwoman, the chairwoman of Sentebale, Dr. Sophie, she was to present an award to Harry after he played in that polo match. And to have her be treated on that stage the way that she was, Meghan was basically swatting her away as if she was a fly that she was just trying to just get out of her orbit and just, shooing her off to the side. It was like Meghan's feet were planted into the ground, and there is no way in hell that she was going to let Dr. Sophie get next to Harry, her husband, on that stage and present him with a trophy. How trite and how frivolous and how just completely disrespectful do you have to be? But that is not Meghan's charity. Meghan has nothing to do with Sentebale. The two people on that stage that it should have been all about was Harry as the patron receiving the trophy from Dr. Sophie, who was the chairwoman of that charity. Meghan had nothing to do with it, but that is just a perfect example of her being just divisive, inserting herself in a most just gross and disrespectful way. That's exactly what she did. And then on top of that, to have Harry fire off communication to Dr. Sophie, he wanted Dr. Sophie to release a statement about that controversial video because it was going viral. It had been making the rounds all over social media and the internet. People were watching it and watching Meghan's rude behavior, saying, who is that woman that Meghan keeps shooing away? To have Harry contact Dr. Sophie and basically try to bully and goad her into releasing her own statement to the press, in effect, kind of explaining and or trying to pretty up Meghan's behavior on that stage. And Dr. Sophie refused. She refused because she knew that that was trite, trivial behavior to begin with. And it was trite, trivial behavior that Harry was calling her to engage in order to defend Meghan's behavior. It's just all so disgusting. Dr. Sophie wasn't having any of it. So that is why she went on Sky News in the first place. So do I think that we have heard the last of Dr. Sophie? Absolutely not. Let's see what comes out, what dirty laundry comes out, exactly what happened beyond what we already know behind the scenes. And this is the pool that Harry and Meghan have been swimming in for years. Everyone is a bully and everyone is a racist that do not like their behavior. And what goes around comes around, and it seems like they're being hit with the same types of claims and finger pointing that they like to do to everyone else. Personally, I can't wait to see how all of this plays out. Now, do I think that there was ego involved on both sides? Well, absolutely. I mean, you look at Harry, and we obviously know what he's all about and what his huge ego is all about. But you look at Dr. Sophie, and she really looks like someone who does not suffer fools lightly. Does she look like she's probably the most easy person to deal with? Probably not, but she's also a person that has a lot of experience, a lot of education. She carries herself well, she speaks well, and wanting to work tirelessly for the benefit of that charity. That's really what she wants to do. So when she sees mismanagement, when she sees egos, when she sees Harry trying to drag Netflix crews into Sentebale events and trying to make it all about him and his selfish wife, she's going to speak up and she's going to have something to say. And guess what? She won't be silenced. I don't necessarily agree with the opinion that is that both sides were kind of being chided and that they're both at fault. It's easy to look at that on the surface, but when you dig deeper and you find out the realities of the motivations behind both parties, it really is really evident that the motivation that Harry has is not the motivation that Dr. Sophie has. Dr. Sophie started this whole entire thing after she felt that she was being unfairly booted out, or rather, they were trying to unfairly boot her out, but she still made her complaint in private. She didn't drag this whole issue into the public domain the way that Harry did, because she knows that the reputation of the charity is the number one thing. Helping those children is the number one thing. Harry is out for himself and the almighty buck. He wants to help himself, he wants to enrich himself, and he wants to enrich his wife. And for those people that think that he doesn't, all you have to do is look at his behavior. Not only in this particular instance, but in the way that he monetized trash talking his family. He's not giving interviews where he's not getting paid, where he's just talking about the hurt that he feels and maybe hopefully trying to come to a way back. He's made a career trash-talking his family and everyone else who doesn't agree with anything that he does, and he makes sure that he monetizes it every single time that he does it. So just look at the motivations behind both parties. That to me is enough evidence to not say that, oh, well, you know, both parties were at fault here and both parties didn't win. I don't think that it's even. Maybe she was a little bit rude in the way that she was dealing with Harry and he didn't like it. But then again, he doesn't like any criticism. He doesn't like any pushback at all. The only person that he seems to take orders from, like a little lapdog without any pushback at all, is from his wife. So I'm just really, my ears are going to perk up to see how all of this plays out. I am personally rooting for Dr. Sophie. I am personally rooting for Sentebale, because now what we're starting to hear is little rumblings. Maybe he's going to start his own charity, or he's going to try to pull donors away from Sentebale. This guy couldn't even manage a Taco Bell. What makes him think that he is equipped to start a whole nother charity? I mean, this is ridiculous. The Charity Commission gave both parties guidance, and one of the main things that they said is you need to have clearly defined roles. There can't be all this gray area. There has to be specific designated roles, and there has to be cooperation between those roles, because that was apparently the big problem with Sentebale, is that they basically said that all of these different factors, all these different people working within the charity, that the roles were ambiguous, that they weren't defined. And that's why there was so much stepping on toes. There was so much, ill tempers going on behind the background and all that. Personally, in my humble opinion, I believe that Harry was trying to overstep his bounds as patron. Rather than just being the face of the charity, he tried to kind of come in and strong arm Dr. Sophie and tell her as chairwoman how to run things. And Dr. Sophie, rightly so, was like, excuse me, you haven't even been involved in the inner workings of this charity for 6 years since you married that woman. And only at my behest did you come out and visit Africa and visit the charity. But because of Harry and his own little ego, this is what has happened now. Now Sentebale is going to have to try to pull themselves up out of this dust and this ashes and try to rebuild their good name, because Harry has to take it upon himself to drag this fight into a public forum. Just completely infantile behavior. But honestly, what do we expect from Harry at this point? Not a whole heck of a lot. Moving on. Oh my gosh, the sun is just completely blinding me right now. I hope that you can see me. We have still not received our air or sea shipment, so all of the things that I usually have to light my videos and have it look the way that I want to, I don't have it right now. So I do apologize if my light is a little bit wonky, so just try to work with me here. Have a little grace. I do apologize. It's hard. I wish I had my lights. I wish I had my setup. I'm still just relying on natural light here in front of one of the back bedrooms at our place here in Germany. But anywho, moving on, Meghan. Okay, Miss Markle. She's just never going to learn, you guys. She's never going to learn. There's no self-introspection. There's no discernment. There's no looking inward, trying to do better, trying to appear humble. It's just always excuse after excuse after excuse. It's always pointing the blame. It's always, it's them, it's not me, it's not me. The latest example of this was the lovely Kinsey Schofield. She had on her program the author of the 2022 book Courtier's Valentine Lowe. And if you've been following the royals for any length of time, like I have, you no doubt have heard that name. Valentine Lowe is a really respected journalist. He is a royal commentator and journalist. And he famously, in that book, Courtiers, in 2022, came out and broke the story of the bullying allegations against Meghan Markle. The people that had worked under her that had apparently suffered pretty moderate to severe psychological damage working for that woman felt compelled to speak out, and they did so. And they described a very, very toxic work environment dealing with that woman, and it was not good. It was not good. And the article that I have pulled up here in front of me is from the New York Post, and he was explaining in that interview with Kinsey that the staff members that had worked directly under and for Meghan, they waited years before they spoke to him for his book, basically 2 years, because a lot of them were not only afraid to do so, they were afraid of retaliation, they were afraid of her revenge, but also because they don't want to stir up the pot in the sense that they don't necessarily want to be known, they don't want their lives disrupted, they just want to move on. But I guess they felt that it was important enough to speak to him because it was basically a pretty severe psychological beating working for Meghan. And basically it says that, she was accused of bullying, and Lowe said, quote, there was strong elements of nervousness and worry among the people that spoke out because they were still in a really, really fragile state. And Valentine goes on to say that these people were very, very worried about what Meghan would do to them because, quote, they said they viewed her capacity for revenge as infinite, end quote. So she was in the royal family for 22 months, 20 months, something like that. She wasn't there very long. Now, Princess Catherine and William and Charles and Camilla and all of them, they've had some people working for them for decades, okay? The dresser that had worked with Catherine, that had just left the position just this past month or so, she had worked for the Princess of Wales for 15 years and with Catherine's blessing left to pursue other avenues. But what does that tell you? That speaks of loyalty. That speaks of mutual respect between the princess and Prince William and their people in their employ. And it was a very famous story when Meghan was still first in the family that both the Queen and Prince William were just taken aghast by her behavior and the way that she would treat employees. And the Queen had to famously step in and say, Meghan, we don't speak to people like that in our household. We don't treat people in such a manner. It's undignified. So it was 2.5 years later when they came out of the employ of the royal family, and basically, they're in this damaged, delicate psychological state. And of course, they're anonymous. They're reporting to Valentine as he's writing this book, but remaining anonymous because they don't want any pushback or clapback from that woman. And what did Tom Bauer call his book? Revenge? I mean, what does that tell you? What did she have to do and say to them on a daily basis for them to come back and make a statement that says, we're pretty much scared shitless of this woman because of her infinite capacity for revenge? Are you freaking kidding me? So basically, they're describing her as, quote, a narcissistic sociopath who would go on screaming tirades and that she was very, very difficult to work with. And what's funny is that is the UK side of it. Okay, those are people from the palace that were in her employ in the UK. And then what ends up happening back in January 2025, Vanity Fair and The Hollywood Reporter release their own articles talking about this same thing, about people working for Meghan, calling her, quote, a dictator in high heels. Did Meghan sue Valentine Lowe over that book, Courtiers? No. Did she sue Vanity Fair or The Hollywood Reporter over what they wrote about her, over what people that were employed by her in America said about her, which were really scary and echoed exactly what the people that were working under her at the palace said? Isn't that interesting how that works out? How they're just an echo chamber of each other? And what do they have in common, ladies and gentlemen? What is the common denominator here? Well, it's Mad Hatter crazy Meghan Markle. Am I right? So, of course, like Harry with the whole Sentebale UK Charity Commission findings, she feels compelled to clap back at the statements that Valentine Lowe made in his interview with Kinsey Schofield. And she says, quote, that basically Lowe is blasting harmful gossip. And he continues to desperately recycle false and offensive and long discredited allegations in an apparent bid to sell books and resuscitate relevance. And she says that These claims are rooted in anonymous, unverifiable sources, and that they form part of a broader and deeply troubling agenda, which just seeks to dehumanize her, right? Because she's a woman who has, quote, consistently stood up for fairness, dignity, and the truth, end quote. This book is 3 years old. He's not trying to resuscitate anything. He has nothing to sell. But this guy is exactly like Tom Bauer in the sense that he does meticulous, methodical research that is vetted by teams of lawyers before it goes to be published. And he himself said that Meghan's camp sent his camp 2 letters. One was a really long and lengthy kind of like, you better not do this type of warning letter. And she sent him another one, but didn't end up suing at all. Valentine Lowe and Tom Bauer, people like that are not dummies. They are not going to publish lies. They're going to go through reputable and verified sources. They're going to people who were obviously employed by this woman. So for her to say that what Valentine wrote in his book is rooted in anonymous and unverifiable sources is complete and total BS. Of course they're unverified because these people have all signed NDAs. So she's stating the obvious. Doesn't get it. Of course they're unverifiable because Valentine Lowe is not going to blow their cover. He's not going to state who they are because they don't want to be called out. And not only that, but they sign non-disclosure agreements in the first place if they want to work for the palace and they want to work for the royal family. That is one of the deeply ingrained clauses about working for that family. And for her to just basically dehumanize them in a sense, because that's what she's doing. She says that they're trying to dehumanize her, and she's a woman who's constantly trying to stand up for dignity and truth and fairness. But what is she doing? She's dehumanizing them by calling them anonymous, by calling them unverifiable. It's just so despicable. This behavior is so despicable, and it speaks of what has this woman learned? Nothing. She has learned absolutely nothing. What would happen? Oh my goodness. What would happen if this woman would finally see the light, buy herself a clue? What if she took a completely different tactic here after how many years? Because this woman has been claiming that everyone that comes into contact with her that doesn't agree with what she says and what she does, a racist bully. She got Harry to do that back in 2016. So now we're coming up on 10 years of her calling everyone that doesn't agree with her a racist, a bully. They're trying to dehumanize her when she's just a mom, she's just a mom who makes jam and stands up for, strength and dignity and fairness and truth. But she's dehumanizing the people that don't have a voice, but they did sign NDAs. She's the one trying to take away voices from the voiceless. And that was always her big shtick. She wants to give everyone a voice. It's so unbelievably depressing to see these two, 10 years on, still riding this same crazy train, still pointing fingers and still taking zero accountability. It's not authentic, Meghan. Authenticity is also admitting fault and admitting wrongdoing when you have hurt others. There's never been one moment in Harry's public discourse, in all the statements and interviews that he's given, nor hers, never one moment of genuine self-reflection or a cause for pause. Something along the lines of, you know what? I am really, really looking carefully at a lot of these stories and interviews and people that are talking about us. And I am taking time, careful, deliberate time to really, really take to heart what's being said and what's being written about me. I'm going to engage in some careful introspection. I'm going to make sure that in future, both of my personal and business relationships and endeavors don't center around this type of controversy because my main goal is, charity and good faith and cooperation. Do you think that ever any type of words like that or a statement like that would ever fall from these two, from their mouths? Never, never. But we have got to hope that somehow, someday, somewhere, these two are going to come to the light, have their come to Jesus moment, because you cannot continue to treat people like this. So unfortunately, I really do think that the way that they go to battle, the ugly, just nasty way that they go to battle against people that speak out about them, I can guarantee you 100% that that's the nasty way that they go to battle against each other behind closed doors, because it's become more and more evident over the past few months that Harry wants out, that he wants nothing to do with this woman. He wouldn't have let that story leak out about how he went MIA in Botswana to go visit his, stand-in mother, that filmmaker. I forget her name, TJ something, but that's the woman that he supposedly went to when he was trying to determine the future of his relationship with Chelsea Davy, because there was a lot of internal struggle between Chelsea and Harry, because Harry wanted to move forward, but Chelsea wasn't sure that she wanted the type of life that would be, happening if she stayed with Harry. So he went and met with that TJ woman, I guess, at that pivotal, crucial point in his life, because he supposedly loves Africa. He loves the African people. He loves the landscape, and he really felt that he can be himself out there and be unfettered by the press and all of this stuff. So just the fact that he let that story come out this past month, that's all calculated PR move. And he knows that when Meghan reads a story like that and knows that a story like that is out there, she feels her grip of control on him lessening more and more and more. So I really do feel that these two are probably very ugly to each other behind closed doors. I feel like they're probably really nasty. They're probably really fighting. And I think that when they eventually separate, we're going to see a scandal like probably no other. I really do feel that Meghan's kind of like an Amber Heard when, if you know anything about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, but Amber was really famous for doing and saying things to Johnny when he wasn't aware. Like, for example, when he was intoxicated or when they were fighting, she would always do weirdo things like secretly film him and use that type of stuff, that footage, as leverage to try to build what I believe was her false case against him, to try to somehow prove that he was the aggressor and she was the victim. So I really do think that Meghan probably is doing things like that behind the scenes. This woman filmed their engagement. She was filming everything in their lives from the first time he took her to Botswana back in, what was it, 2015, 2016 or whatever. I think it was 2016. She's been filming and documenting their relationship from the start. So don't think for one second that she's not pulling a little Amber Heard behind the scenes, and she's just carefully cataloging everything and keeping it in her back pocket for when she needs to pull it out and play her hand, whether she's going to do a documentary, whether she's going to write a tell-all book. She's got some nasty things in store, and I don't really think that Harry knows what's coming. Unfortunately, everything that's going on right now is just desserts. Harry deserves it 100%. This is God's justice coming down on this man. And I do hear a lot of rumblings out there, people saying stuff like, we feel sorry for Harry, like his mental health, like what is he going through? Oh my gosh, being married to that woman. But guess what? He allowed all this to happen. He has been a petulant man-child who's been jealous of his brother and of being, the spare of his lot in life. And he took that hatred and that jealousy, and he met someone who could help him channel all that misguided and deviant and hateful energy into the way that his life is being played out now. At no part in their relationship, even very early on, did Harry stop and say, you know what? This is not okay. The way that you are treating my family, the way that you are talking to staff, the way you're talking to the family, everything that you're doing is not acceptable. I love you, but you will not treat my family like that. You will treat them with respect that they deserve. And just the fact that, for example, she would always call the Queen Harry's grandmother, like I would always just be like nails on a chalkboard when I would hear that, because I really feel that as a narcissist, that's what people like Meghan do. Wait, hold on. This sun is becoming crazy. It's like so stinking hot today. It's like in the 90s and it's like right on me. Sorry. But yeah, like that is the way that they try to devalue people. That is the way that she somehow, I think, makes herself feel better, because there is only one king, and that is Jesus Christ, the King of Kings. But I also recognize that on earth, there are earthly kings and queens. And I'm not a member of the Church of England. I'm not, part of the Anglican Church. I'm a Roman Catholic. If I were to meet the Queen, well, bless her, she's gone. But had I met the Queen, or if I were to meet Prince Charles, I would curtsy. I would show respect, the respect that they deserve in the office that they hold. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not demeaning yourself by curtsying to the Queen or to the King out of respect for the title that they hold. But people like Meghan, they really, and I talked about this in my whole 5-part Spot the Narcissist series, but narcissists have such self-loathing that they're constantly trying to build themselves up, not only in their own eyes, but in the eyes of others. And people like Meghan really do feel that if they curtsy or show respect to a king or a queen, that somehow is making themselves less, and their little egos can't handle it. Well, they're not little egos, they're huge egos. But do you see where I'm going with this? So just even the fact that she wouldn't even really ever say Her Majesty, or even when people would ask her, who do you admire? Who do you look up to? Remember when she edited that Vogue article about those influential women? She didn't even put the Queen in that list. I mean, what does that tell you? She just cannot bring herself to show respect or even a little bit of deference to anybody. That is their big problems. They're just defiant. They're just ugly. They're filled with hatred and vile selfishness and self-loathing. And unfortunately, because of that, it has been their sad and just painful demise to watch in the public eye. I believe that they're getting everything that they deserve, and God's just letting it happen. They could turn this crazy train around. I don't think that they want to. So in the meantime, people like myself, we're going to continue to watch them. We're going to continue to call them out. I'm going to continue to pray for them, and I would encourage you to do the same. But they are still a son and a daughter of Jesus Christ and valuable human beings because God himself wanted to breathe them into existence. But the problem is that they don't know that. They don't know that. They are so consumed with the self that they cannot see outside of themselves. They can't see the error of their ways. They can't talk about forgiveness and really, really go about it and work that in their lives. And they can't see God's infinite mercy and love for them. Because if they understood that, they would see that the path that they're on is wrong, and they would want to make amends, and they would want to stop looking inward and constantly playing the victim card, because you don't have time for it. When you are on this earth, we're all on this earth for such a short amount of time. And when you are so unbelievably selfish that you're constantly making it about yourself and your own victimhood and, calling other people out and being mean and rotten and nasty, you don't have time to do anything good in the world. And that's their big problem. So I think I babbled about these fools in this video long enough, but let me know what you think. Just watching that whole thing play out this past week with the whole Sentebale deal, watching the way that Meghan had to immediately clap back after that Valentine Lowe Kinsey Schofield interview, how they both are just so compelled again to remind us about what victims they are. It's just disgusting to watch. So yeah, continue to pray for these fools. Hopefully they'll kind of lay low for a bit so that we can maybe stop talking about them for a while and maybe talk about some other things. If you're sick of these fools, go watch my Errol Flynn series. I'm really enjoying making those videos, and I really wish that more of you guys would watch them. They're really fun to do, and they're really fun to film and talk about. I'm reading the book called Errol Flynn Slept Here, and if you don't know, Errol Flynn back in the day was the king of Hollywood, and he was a notorious womanizer, hedonist, atheist, playboy. His life is just a cautionary tale of what not to do. But I look at a lot of what Errol did in his life, and I'm reading that book, Errol Flynn Slept Here, and in conjunction, I'm reading his autobiography, and I find him in his own musings in that book a far more sympathetic character than Harry and Meghan, because he is very self-effacing, but he's not disingenuous in the way that he does it. Like, he points fingers at other people, but even more so, he points them right back at himself. He knows he's a flawed human being, and he talks about it at length in that book. So if you want to kind of get involved involved in a fun and interesting book, get on that series. I will link it in the description. And like I said, I really love filming those videos, and I did a whole Joan Crawford series. I want to start reading more and more books on this channel so that I can talk about a more wide range of topics, because this Harry and Meghan stuff, while I find that it's really relevant and it's good to talk to you in the sense that it's a good cultural discourse to have and to continue to have, the fatigue does get real after a time. So if you want to support me, you want to support my channel, try some of my other playlists. I would so love it. Like the video if you haven't. Please subscribe if you haven't. I appreciate and love you guys so much. Thank you for sticking with me with my crazy lighting and all this good stuff. Hopefully by Christmas, we'll get our shipments and I will be able, we're going to be moving into a permanent place. I'll have my setup. Things will be back to normal. But until then, again, thanks for sticking with me. Love you guys. God bless. And I will talk to you very soon. Bye.